Good afternoon, everybody. Dennis Thralt here, Communications Coordinator for the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Thanks, y'all, for being here. Just a couple things that I want to go through today. So we're here to talk about winter and severe weather and how COVID is affecting, we have a plan every year. We've built that over the last couple of years, and COVID's affecting that plan. So we're here to talk about what that means and what we hope the community can help us with today. And to help us with that, we've got a few speakers. We've got County Chair Deborah Kafoury, we've got Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, Portland Commissioner Dan Ryan, and Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Meieran. We also have Stacy Bork, who's the Senior Director of Programs for Transition Projects. We've got Andy Goebel, who is the Director of Emergency Management for Do Good Multnomah. And we have Kim James, who is the Street Outreach Program Coordinator for Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare. A couple things for ground rules. We're gonna ask, right now you could see everyone on a gallery view. We're gonna ask folks when you're not talking and when you're not speaking to mute your microphone and turn your video off. When you are speaking, turn it back on. We have an interpreter. We wanna make sure that we can have folks clearly see what the interpreter is doing. The other thing, we'll have questions, but we're gonna ask that we wait until after everyone is speaking for questions. So with questions, we know folks might wanna ask them in the chat, but we actually would really love it if you just unmute yourself when the time comes, say who you are, and ask your question that way. It's more engaging, but if that's not possible, we'll be looking at the chat. And you can also text my cell phone at 510-875-8546. So with that, I will follow my own directions, and bear with us if there's weird, awkward moments. We hope not, but I'm gonna turn myself off and hand things over to Chair Kafoury. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If you've stepped outside at any point this past week, you've no doubt felt a decisive chill in the air, a reminder that the frigid, wet Pacific Northwest winter season is just around the corner. My county and city colleagues and I called this press conference because we know that thousands of our neighbors experiencing homelessness will need a safe, warm place to go during the coldest nights ahead of us. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will not be able to offer the shelter we need this winter unless we receive your help. Joining me today are Mayor Ted Wheeler, County Commissioner Sharon Meieran, and City Commissioner Dan Ryan, as well as several homeless service providers who've been indispensable partners in the Joint Office of Homeless Services work, responding to the needs of our neighbors living outside. And I want to take a quick moment to extend a special welcome to Commissioner Ryan, whose new portfolio at the city includes the Joint Office. I'm looking forward to working with you, Dan, and I'm excited to continue the same kind of deep partnership that we had with your predecessor and my friend, Nick Fish. Because it's this partnership that has helped tens of thousands of people every year and allowed the Joint Office to pivot swiftly and safely to meet the emergent needs of people living outside during the COVID-19 pandemic. We were able to quickly spread out our shelter system so that we could follow physical distancing guidelines without losing the total number of shelter beds available. And I want to say that again, because of that hard work, our shelter system has safely stayed open throughout this pandemic without losing any beds. As we prepare to provide extra shelter during dangerously cold nights, we need more and larger spaces in order to guarantee no turnaway shelter beds, a vital life-saving resource during severe weather that the Joint Office has offered since the winter of 2016. Put another way, as it stands right now, because of COVID-19, we cannot guarantee that everyone who needs it will have a shelter on the worst nights of the year. But that can change. It has to change. We know from experience that we will need at least 300 extra beds ready in order to offer safe, warm, dry shelter during the coldest nights to everyone who needs it. Because of the measures we need to take to keep people as safe as possible from COVID-19, we are unable to use some of the sites that we've relied on in the past years. The Joint Office is committed, as always, to doing everything we can to keep this promise to our neighbors living outside. But this year, especially, we need the help of community to meet our goals. Our biggest and most urgent needs are buildings that we can use as shelters and the caring volunteers to help staff them. We are asking the public for leads on spaces, both private and public, that have the potential to be used as shelter. We've already begun reaching out to our partners in other public agencies and universities, but today we're asking community members to help us too. With more shelter spaces, we're going to need more volunteers to greet and care for our shelter residents. Crises often reveal the character of a community. As a lifelong resident of Multnomah County, I've seen the countless ways this community has come together in trying times. This has never been more true than how we've shown up for our neighbors during the challenges of this difficult year. And I'm confident that our community can and will step up again with compassion and generosity. And now I'll hand the screen off to Mayor Wheeler.
Well, thank you, Chair Kafoury, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Even though COVID remains our community's greater challenge, the city, the county, and all of our partners continue to step up in new and, I believe, productive ways. We want to do whatever it takes to help people stay safe on the coldest and wettest nights of the year. This year, of course, we've added hundreds of indoor shelter beds that will open no matter the temperature or the conditions every night through the end of March. 275 new beds are in addition to the 1,400 year-round beds in our physically distanced shelters and motel shelters. And they're also in addition to the beds that we want to open on the coldest nights. The 275 new COVID-safe spaces, which are located at the Charles Jordan and the Mount Scott Community Centers, and most recently, the old Greyhound Terminal in Old Town, will be open 24 hours a day. And we're also keeping our Walnut Park shelter, which has been open year-round, but only at night, open 24 hours a day. That's more than we've ever done during the course of the winter. I want to thank our partners at Transition Projects, Do Good Multnomah, 211 Info, and the Joint Office of Homeless Services, Multnomah County, the Portland Housing Bureau, and the Portland Parks and Recreation Department for supporting our work and to keep people safe during the cold and wet winter months. The new shelters we've opened will help people in need all winter, including on the coldest nights. Our entire community will benefit thanks to the fact that we can help even more people stay out of the elements than ever before. But with COVID, we simply cannot rely on our traditional spaces to protect people during severe weather. We need more and larger spaces to accommodate physical distancing guidelines. Like Chair Kafoury and my colleagues here, I've been picking up the phone because what we really need right now is buildings, and we need staff, we need volunteers to serve those who come to those buildings. Like always, we're asking for your donations. We need those donations more than we've ever needed them, not just for our shelter providers, but for the outreach teams we support through the Joint Office of Homeless Services and for the dozens of community groups that help distribute winter gear and supplies. So please visit 211info.org/donations. Again, that's 211info.org/donations. You can donate right from your phone thanks to online shopping lists, which is convenient and it's sensible during a pandemic. You can also help by volunteering. You'll find a link at Transition Project's homepage at www.tprojects.org. Again, that's www.tprojects.org. We're asking because we know you've come through for us before. You found us spaces for winter shelters downtown and for a family shelter in Northwest Portland. We're asking because we know this community cares and wants to help us do whatever it takes to keep people safe on the coldest nights of the year. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan to take it from here. Dan, good afternoon. Dan, you muted.
Hello, let me try this again. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Ryan. I'm the Portland's newest city commissioner, and I am the commissioner in charge of the Joint Office for Homeless Services. In the theme of picking up the phone and leveraging community assets, I'm going to go into the details a bit about what Chair Kafoury shared earlier about our needs for buildings. I firmly believe in building bridges and bringing people together, as there is a great power in partnerships. Before COVID, we had an effective system in place for helping people during cold weather, and it was getting better and getting stronger every year. Now, because of COVID, the world is in a different place. Everything has been turned on its head. We need to be creative and seek new and creative partnerships now more than ever. We're talking with public agencies and asking for help, but we need private partnerships as well. That's where all of you come in. We're looking for spaces in the central city, in Mid-County, and in Gresham. We will likely need 3 to 5 large spaces. These spaces cannot be remote or difficult to reach. They need to be accessible so people will be able to, more importantly, so people will actually want to come into them. These also need to be spaces where we gain access to on demand within 12 hours. Because of COVID-19, we need larger spaces than in the years past. In fact, we need twice as much space to shelter the same number of people. Again, these spaces must be carefully located so that those who need them can and will be able to access them. Within that, we also need 5,000 or more square feet. We need bathrooms, more the better, but even a few stalls is enough for these purposes. An area where a provider can store mats, blankets, and other gear, or in a parking outside, or a place for or POD for storage. We can use any kind of large open space, a gymnasium, a cafeteria, a large meeting hall, a ballroom, or even a concept floor, even floor of offices. It's preferable if the space is on the ground floor. It has direct access to the street and ADA accessibility, has a hard floor surface that's easy to clean, a space that we can use at night, but preferably also during the day if conditions require people to shelter in place. Easily accessible by mass transit, and a space that we can leave, that we can set up between uses, and at least have supplies on site. Once again, if you don't have any space that meets these needs, but you want to get involved, you can still make a real difference this winter. Volunteers help staff a shelter and donate much needed gear. It's pretty simple and basic to say these are unprecedented, difficult times. We're all going to get through this together. And speaking of working together, I am thrilled to announce, welcome my Commissioner, Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon, Meieran, and welcome to the virtual podium.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Ryan. My colleagues have all shared important ways that we are calling on our neighbors, our friends, and others to ask for help to prepare us for what's coming in the winter. I trust that our community will show up, as they have every year since I've been a commissioner, to help us in creative ways, help us be creative in ways that we can use space for severe weather shelter, and that people will show up as volunteers. I want to really underscore the importance of donating winter gear and essential supplies. The Joint Office of Homeless Services has led a huge push to increase our partnerships with community groups to expand outreach during COVID. We have helped dozens of community groups through a supply center, passing out masks and other gear such as tents, tarps, sleeping bags, hygiene kits, and more. Outreach and gear distribution is essential and can be life-saving, especially during winter weather. On nights when it's below freezing, the Joint Office of Homeless Services declares cold weather alerts, and that mobilizes outreach teams to find people living outside and provide them with more supplies. As an ER doctor, I have been fortunate to join Portland Street Medicine on several shifts to do rounds on our streets and in our shelters, reaching out to those who are most vulnerable to address their medical needs. And so often what we hear is that they need things to keep them warm and protected. I know how important clean, dry, warm socks are because I hear it from people who are outside living outside in their tents. That a tent, a tarp, and warm bedding are essential for so many people surviving in our community. These items are vital, and donating this type of gear is a direct, concrete way that you can help. And it's also easy. As everyone has mentioned, you can visit 211info.org/donations for an updated list of key items, and you can shop and donate online. It's important to donate now, before a crisis. We have to be ready now, through the winter and even into the spring, because as we all know far too well, these are unprecedented and challenging times. And we really do need all the help that we can get. I want to close by saying thank you again to everyone who is out there doing this work now, and for the support from our community that I am confident we can count on this winter. And next, I would like to call up Stacy Bork of Transition Projects.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. I'm glad to be here. I'm Stacy Bork, Senior Director of Programs at Transition Projects. Transition Projects has the privilege of providing life-saving services to people experiencing homelessness. Our outreach teams are on the streets year-round, getting that gear that Commissioner Meieran talked about and resources to neighbors sleeping unsheltered. Our resource center operates 7 days a week to help people meet their very basic needs, like taking a shower, doing their laundry, and getting their mail. Our 9 shelters provide a safe place to sleep off the streets and wraparound services to support people transitioning back into housing. In winter, we expand to offer more shelter, especially on the coldest nights. I'm thankful to be part of this community where each year more than 1,000 volunteers walk alongside us to support more than 10,000 of our most vulnerable neighbors. We rely on you, your families, your friends to help us bring critical, life-saving services to those who need them most. The last year has been tumultuous, scary, and traumatic. When we are being told to stay home, we have neighbors that have no door to close. When we are trying to keep each other and ourselves safe and healthy, we have neighbors who yearn for safety and stability, but sleep unsheltered on our sidewalks, in our doorways, and in our neighborhoods. This year has also reminded us that we cannot do this alone. We need each other. We must find the cracks of light in the darkness. Our staff team and the staff of our sister agencies across the community continue to show up, continue to do the work, to adapt, and to not allow COVID-19 to slow us down in helping people find safety and transition back into housing. Now, more than ever, we need you by our side. You can donate gear and supplies. You can volunteer your time in a severe weather shift, or you can cook a hot meal for people in shelter. You can virtually rally your friends, family, coworkers, and host a donation drive. You can check on your neighbors, even the strong ones, even the ones that you don't know. We need each other. Get involved at tprojects.org and 211.info. Andy Goebel from Do Good Multnomah can attest that now this work, our services, your support is critical, life-saving, and more essential than ever. Andy?
Thanks, Stacy. I am Andy Goebel, and I serve as the Director of Emergency Management for Do Good Multnomah, and I'm also one of the pastors at Portsmouth Union Church in North Portland. Stacy's absolutely correct that it's vital, particularly at this time, to have the support of volunteers and donations in the work that we do. Do Good Multnomah is proud to partner with the Joint Office of Homeless Services and a variety of other community partners to provide shelter and support services to our neighbors experiencing houselessness. One of those shelters that we operate is the shelter at the Charles Jordan Community Center. This shelter is now open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and provides 100 beds of sheltering, which are now all full, all completely socially distanced and safe. And we also have an extra space with 10 severe weather beds that we're able to provide. I'm also thrilled to announce that since we opened a month ago at the Charles Jordan Community Center, we've been able to find permanent supportive housing for 2 people, and we continue to do the work of case management to find housing for folks who are staying in our shelters. We also provide sheltering via motel shelters, and they too are, of course, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are currently operating 2 of those motel shelters, with another one coming online later this month. Each one of those shelters provides beds for 40 or more people. And to date, we've seen over 20 people housed out of those shelters as well. I started this work of supporting and sheltering our houseless neighbors when we opened an independent volunteer-run shelter at Portsmouth Union Church. It was absolutely vital that we had those volunteers to show up and to keep people safe when it was dangerously cold outside. Thanks to a partnership with Do Good Multnomah, we were able to transition from just a severe weather shelter to being open all through the winter season every night. And eventually, that shelter expanded to the Charles Jordan shelter when COVID-19 hit. Being that I'm a pastor and that I've mentioned the church, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how people of faith can partner in this work. First of all, if you're a part of a large congregation with a large space, please consider offering up that space, especially since so many of us are not meeting now, to meet the needs of when we have those severe weather nights. Also, I would say pray. Pray for our neighbors who are experiencing houselessness, but also pray for those who are doing this difficult work at this difficult time. You can also get involved in very practical ways. As has been mentioned previously by several other people, go to 211info.org and donate. Donate that severe weather gear. Donate those needs that we all know that our houseless neighbors need. And then volunteer when severe weather hits. Show up and be one of the people that helps when we need to open these shelters at these times that are dangerously cold. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share and to have the opportunity to do this tremendously important work, and to invite all of you to join us in that work. With that, I'd like to invite Kim James of Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare to take the virtual podium.
Okay, so thanks. As Andy mentioned, I am Kim James. I am the Clinical Director of Homeless and Housing Supports here at Cascadia. I am here representing the street outreach team, for which I also serve as the manager at this moment. For most of us, homelessness is unimaginable. We take for granted that we'll be able to meet our daily needs of safety, food, shelter, and historically, companionship without facing incredible obstacles. Every day, thousands of people awake and build their lives despite the challenges of living without shelter or a regular address. As we know, winter weather here in Portland means more than snow. There's also the threat of freezing rain, sleet, ice, high winds. Those who will feel the changes the most undoubtedly will be the individuals living on the streets. Frozen temperatures can cause frostbite in as little as 5 minutes, depending on the temperature and the individual's preparation for the cold. Our street outreach team provides street and camp level outreach and engagement services to individuals and some families experiencing homelessness, where at least one adult household member is impacted by mental health issues. Because we operate as a fully flexible mental health outpatient program and work collaboratively with other agency providers to ensure individuals living outside are connected with services, including housing options, we recognize that people experiencing homelessness are uniquely vulnerable to contracting COVID-19 and that the effects disproportionately impact people of color who often experience harsher symptoms of the virus. As clinicians, we recognize that in the context of spread and transmission, the risks associated with sleeping outdoors or in an encampment setting are different from staying indoors in a congregate setting, such as an emergency shelter. We must remember, however, that while outdoor settings may allow people to increase physical distance between themselves and others, it often does not provide protection from the environment or the elements. In general, we know that lack of housing contributes to poor physical and mental health outcomes, and we as a community must continue working collaboratively to plan and respond to the needs of those individuals who live their private lives in public. In my most humble opinion, this highlights the importance of helping others to keep warm during the winter and forces us to recognize the need to help those who are struggling on the streets to wrap up and stay warm this winter. And this is where your donations come in. I want to say, and I know you've heard it over and over, I'm going to run out of time, that the first call you should make, either to get or give any type of support, should be to 211. Please remember that your donations of thick coats, gloves, hats, socks, jeans, and even gently worn shoes will be distributed to our most vulnerable folks living outside, and that your donations go a long way in assisting those of us who are working with those individuals on the street to keep people safe, warm, and dry during the ever-changing winter season. I'm going to stop talking now and hand this back to Dennis. Thank you all for your time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, everyone who spoke today. I want to reiterate a couple of things. So the websites that you heard, tprojects.org, that is where folks can go to learn where they can sign up to volunteer. 211info.org/donations. That's the website for folks who, if they're looking to donate that material and find what we need and how to give it, that's the place to go. And both of those organizations, we have that information's on their homepages too. So folks just have the main page, that's fine. And I want to give an email address. If folks do have space for, if they have something they want to offer, JOHS, that's the Joint Office's main email address, JOHS@multco.us. That's the place to email us, so we can look at those offers of spaces, which we know folks are going to come through with. I want to open things up for questions, and again, I want to make clear that besides the speakers we have here who can take questions, we have Mark Jolin, the Joint Office Director, and our Tri-County Health Officer, Dr. Jennifer Vines, also on hand for questions. Again, just if you're gonna ask a question, you could put it in chat. My cell phone's 510-875-8546, but I think the best option, so everyone knows who's asking, is to unmute yourself and identify who you are and ask your question that way, and we'll get it to the right person.
Hi, everybody. I'll start it off. Maggie Vespa with KGW. I think there are a number of people who could, answer this question. I know you mentioned, I think it was Chair Kafoury, needing 300 extra beds. Can we get some more specific context around how many beds are accounted for right now going into this winter? And are we sure we only need 300 this winter, since I know there are no stats to sort of verify this, but a lot of people think it looks like there are indeed more people living on our streets since the pandemic began. So how many beds do we have, and how many do we think we need going into this particular winter?
Mark, why don't you take that one?
Hi, I'm Mark Joel, and I'm the director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services for the city of Portland, Multnomah County. So as the mayor was saying, we've been able to sustain all of our year-round shelter capacity. We're in the process of opening up the 275 beds of what will be 24/7 winter shelter capacity in addition for the adult population. And then the 300 beds is sort of the initial round of surge when we get into severe weather conditions. And depending on how long the conditions last, that may get us through a severe weather incident. And that's based on our historical experience. So, we know that we have many more people sleeping outside than that. But not everybody comes in, and certainly not in the first few nights of a severe weather incident. I think, as the chair noted at the beginning, our goal will be to be able to expand that shelter capacity as much as we need to in order to accommodate everybody who seeks it. But these are very, very challenging times, and the reason that we're here is that even to get to that 300 number, we're going to need more help from the community, both in terms of having these larger spaces so that we can operate efficiently, and going to need the additional people from the community to get trained and be ready to come in and volunteer in these shelter spaces.
Hey there. Hi. This is Everton Bailey from the my question is...
Just leaving it set up at my house so I could...
Oh, sorry.
Use it where it's intended.
Oh, sorry. So it's a... I have a...
If you're not asking a question or answering a question, please, we can hear a little bit of background chatter from someone, so thank you.
Sorry about that. Everton Bailey with the Oregonian again. Two-part question. What would be the protocol for making sure the private spaces being offered are properly sanitized before people are allowed to shelter there? Would this be the responsibility of the owners or the joint office? And also, I believe Chair Kafoury said that volunteers will be accepted to staff these spaces. And so I was wondering what kind of training will be offered to volunteers, if anyone can answer that.
I see a couple of faces lighting up. I think either of you, Stacy, Mark, Chair, either of you want to jump in, feel free.
I was just going to hand it off to Mark or Stacy. They're the experts.
All right. So in terms of volunteer opportunities, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities, and we have a series of orientation sessions coming up in the next couple of weeks for community members who are interested in learning more about severe weather shelter, and then more about what severe weather volunteering looks like. We have had pretty strict protocols in place at Transition Project since the very beginning of April in terms of sanitizing practices, mask wearing, physical distancing between folks in our spaces. And so we will carry those same practices into severe weather shelter. And so we'll be training on that as part of the orientation. But to Everton, to your question, your earlier question, we will ensure that the spaces that we're moving into are sanitized and clean and welcoming for the folks that are going to be staying there. And then we have round-the-clock cleaning practices that we have in place across all of our shelters to ensure that high-touch areas are sanitized and we're keeping people as healthy and safe as we can.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Alex Walensky with the Portland Mercury. I have a follow-up kind of to Maggie's question about the number of beds. I'm curious if you're thinking kind of what happens at, further along in the winter. I know the eviction moratorium is scheduled to end in January, but regardless of if that is extended, I'm curious kind of how you're planning for what's expected to be an increase in houselessness in general tied to the coming evictions. And if that's something, I guess, how you're thinking about that a few months down the road.
Thanks, Alex. I'll start by just saying that there is a difference between the severe weather shelters and the winter shelters. So we're basically following protocol that we've done for the past few years, where we found that this is an appropriate number to shoot for, and it's definitely our goal. We want to continue to do our no turn away, everyone have a place to lay their head. So that is going to be our goal, to make sure that anybody who wants to come inside during the severe weather can. We are very concerned about what's going to happen after the eviction moratorium ends. And we urge everyone to put as much pressure as possible on our federal government. We need a huge federal intervention. That's the only way we're going to be able to stop what we see it's going to happen when the eviction moratorium goes away. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for Tuesday, and we're going to continue to lobby our federal delegation to ensure that those dollars come our way.
Before we hand, anybody else want to add to that before we take another question? All right. Who else has a question?
I'll jump in again, if that's okay. Maggie with KGW again. I know both of these situations might be rather complex, but we have people on social media asking about two spaces that come to mind for them. One being the Oregon Convention Center, and the other being the former Wapato Jail. And they're asking if partnerships to use those spaces have been explored. So what would the answer to those be?
I can think of a few of you who might want to jump in on this one.
This is Deborah. I would say that we are exploring every option, and we have been in contact with, it's in conversation with Metro for the Oregon Convention Center. We've used that building in the past. We're primarily at this point focusing on buildings that are close to the downtown core. That's been our goal, although we do have some, we would like some facilities out in East County. I think Commissioner Ryan described the type of facility that we're looking for and the specific locations that we're looking for, but we are definitely going to be talking with everyone that we can, because we know we need to find as many spaces as possible.
Mark, I saw you light up. Do you want to jump in this?
Just briefly, I think Commissioner Ryan did speak to it, that these sites need to be centrally located, because while we can offer transportation assistance and outreach teams are out there, they need to be easy to get to and easy to leave from. These are short duration events typically, so it's a site that we can open and have open for several days and then close down again when the severe weather situation is over. So it's different than some of our year-round shelter programs, but even there's always a priority on having those shelters be community-based, proximate to transit, proximate to resources. And with the severe weather shelters in particular, we want those sites to be as close to where we see high numbers of people who likely need those severe weather shelter beds as we possibly can get. So that is the lens through which we are looking at the sites. And we're hoping that there are those sites, and we've been able to find them in the past, that the community can help us identify.
This is Dennis again. Any other speakers want to speak to this question before we move along? Okay. Who else has a question?
I guess I have one more just kind of fact-based question. I'm curious if you could remind us kind of in the past which spaces you've relied on for these shelter, for these, cold weather emergency spaces. I know the Portland building was used in the past when it was empty, and there are a few others, but just refresh our memory.
Stacy, do you want to talk about the spaces that you all have been using for the last couple of years?
Sure. So for the past number of years, we've used the Imago Dei Community Center, which is part of the kind of Imago Dei faith community located inner southeast 13th and Ankeny. We've used the Resource Center located at the Bud Clark Commons in Old Town on Broadway and Irving. And then we've used the Sunrise Center in East Portland on 189th. So all of these spaces are currently being considered, but to Commissioner Ryan's point earlier, they're just, they're smaller than we really need to try to achieve capacity in a COVID environment.
Alex, did that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, it's Everton Bailey from the Oregonian again. Just one quick one. For the private spaces that are being offered, is there a minimum amount of time that space is needed? Are we talking from December to February, or any time that can be available is what you guys are looking for?
Everton, this is Mark Jolin again. So essentially from Thanksgiving through the end of March is when we expect to see a certain number of nights of severe weather. So ideally, a space would be available to us on any number of nights over the course of that period of months.
All right, thanks a lot. As we're getting close, if there's maybe one more question, and then if there's anything else, folks can, if you have more facts to ask for, you can get a hold of me and I can set you up with what you need. But if there's one more question, let's go for it. And I'll put myself back at hearing the side. Although Everton, you want to ask? I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was waiting to see if anyone else had something, but I just wanted to follow up with Mark's response. Do the spaces have to be available for that entire duration from November to March, or can it be December to January, or just trying to get some clarification there?
So I would say I'd encourage anyone who has a large space that would be available for a significant portion of that window to please reach out to us. As opportunities come in, we'll have to evaluate them against sort of the various priorities we have. But certainly if someone has that space available only for a couple of months in there, we'd love to talk to them and take a look at how that might be a space that we use.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks to everyone who spoke today. Chair Kafoury, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Ryan, Commissioner Meieran, Stacy, Andy, Kim, Mark, Dr. Vines for being here, and all of you who came to ask questions. Restating, tprojects.org is the website for folks to find out how they can train to be a volunteer. 211info.org/donations for folks to donate gear, online shopping lists. Like you heard that a lot. That's really important. And for folks who have buildings, johs@multco.us. Those are the three things we would really love your readers and viewers to know about to help us with this. Thank you all for being here on a Friday, and we will all talk soon, I'm sure. Take care. Thanks. Well.
Bye, everybody.